college? Because most of your contemporaries did not go
Right.
to college. And your sister didn't go to college,
No,
did
she didn't. No. I don't know, because I loved school so much, I really would have loved to have gone to college. But you know, when I graduated from the 12th grade, I graduated from high school, I had no idea that I was going to college. I hadn't done anything to try to go to college. All the kids had an idea of what jobs they were going to have, either in the Five and Dime or at the state hospital, or, you know, little jobs that people were getting.
Going to college, you know, frankly, when I was in high school, I never even imagined I'd go to college. I was visiting a friend's house, and he had an older sister who was graduating that year. I was a junior. So I had another year of college, or another year of high school. And she came back from the local junior college, and my friend and I were sitting around just passing the time, and she says, I just got back from the junior college, and you know they'll give you money to go to school. And I'm going like, what do you mean they give you money? Yes, back then there was a basic educational opportunity grant. And you go and see a professor there, Ismael Talavera, and he will sign you up. They'll send off for money, and you can go to college with that money. That's when I first started thinking about college. Up to then, nobody in my house had ever graduated from high school other than one sister. Nobody ever thought about college. The thing was, get a job, take care of it, and you'll be fine. It was then that I realized that, you know, I can make it to college. So I went to a junior college. I didn't even realize I had SAT and ACTs. I took the ACT, and my test scores were sent to the junior college, and I got in. And once I got there, I was lucky enough to have real good professors who told me and showed me what the world was like. I grew up in a real small community in South Texas, and that's my world. That was my world. Driving up and down Main Street, sitting at the local grocery store watching other people drive up and down Main Street, and that was it. And we were content. But it was only when I went to the junior college that professors told me, you know, you can go places, you're smart enough, and my world started opening up for me.
And I really hadn't thought through what I was going to do. And I had been cleaning houses up to then, and I don't know if I planned to continue doing that. I don't know what I was going to do. But the night I graduated, there were 21 students that graduated from high school. And of those 21, that night, at graduation night, there were 7 awards. And I got all 7. One other student, there was a double award, and another student got one of the awards, and I got all 7 awards the graduation night. Back then they didn't have scholarships. The awards were Years of Reader's Digest, the Great Citizen, and if I ever went to college, I could join the greatest sorority that ever existed. You know, those are the kinds of things that you got, but you didn't get any scholarships, and there was no money, there was no enticement. I had the counselor, we didn't have counselors, but we had taken a test before we graduated, and I was told that I would be an excellent teacher, but I didn't want to be a teacher. In my head, I wanted to go live in Latin America. There was already something in me about the Mexicana bit. And I wanted to go live in Latin America, and I wanted to probably be a secretary. But I couldn't type with a darn. I didn't enter the picture, you know, and that's what I wanted to do. But I had only shared it with my mother. I never told anybody else, but my mother, many years later, when I was named ambassador, and my mother already was into senility, and she said, "Mijita, se te consiguió el deseo de ir a vivir en América Latina."
I was fortunate enough to have a very strong mother, who some of you have met, and she was much stronger when she was younger. I think she's lost a little bit of her edge, and she was really always speaking to us about the importance of education. But what I think is very different for those of us in this society and those of us of other traditions is that education for us was more about being well-mannered and being a good son or daughter, respecting your elders. And that's how my family understood education. So we, because we were not from this country, meaning my parents, always thought education meant that you would learn that in school. And unfortunately, that really also wasn't true. But it kept us going. And I know it kept me going, searching and seeking. And so because I did have a very strong mother, she really fought with my father to get my sister to go to school. And that was very eye-opening for me as a child. That was, I mean, one of the reasons my sister is educated is because my mother really fought for her to go to school. And my father would always make the argument, well, she's a woman, she'll have a man to take care of her. My mother refused to accept that story. I also did the same thing as Joe, which is also very interesting. I just thought I could go to a community college, and it was expected from my mother because my sister and my brother had done the same thing. And my eyes were continually on going to San Diego State because it was the easier school to get into, and I didn't feel I could accomplish more than that. And the year that I was going to apply to San Diego State, I was going to go into social work. I wanted to be a social worker. I don't know why, but just this thing to want to work with the community. And that year there was a famous Proposition 13 in California, which shut down a lot of the programs in the universities because the state dollars were running dry. So they shut down the social work program. And I happened to talk to an advisor that was at the community college from the University of California, San Diego, which in our eyes was a much more exclusive university. It was a much more intense university. And she came to visit me and said, you know, you could really come here if you want to. And I was in complete shock of that. And that started my journey then to go to the University of California, San Diego. And what was unique about that experience is they always were training you in a way to think about going beyond your bachelor's degree. And it was a very difficult experience. The only reason I survived is because we had housing that was housing where you had a lot of your friends live right next to you. It was like more of a residential housing. It wasn't a dorm housing. And that's why we survived, because all of us who were doing similar work came together and we shared homework and we shared readings. We covered for each other when somebody couldn't go to class. And we really established a nice community of friends. And a lot of people from Los Angeles, from the Imperial Valley. And we did that. Now I have another one of these interesting stories about going to Notre Dame, because again, I was planning, okay, I'll finish with my bachelor's degree in sociology and I'll go into counseling. And the reason I wanted to go into counseling was because there was a really neat residential advisor there where I was living who told me I would really be good for this program, which was called the Community-Based Block Program, which still exists. It was a very innovative program because it required you to do a lot of community service. It was not so book focused. To make a long story short, I went with my friend to go visit this program, and I really liked it. I applied, and then I received a letter telling me that I had been placed on a waiting list. So that's when I continued looking, but by this time it was really late in the year. It was probably like March or April I was going to graduate at the end of May, maybe February. So then I ran into a guy named Richard Griswold del Castillo, who's a well-known historian in San Diego, and he teaches at San Diego State, but he happened to be teaching at UCSD that year. So I asked him, hey, I'm interested in, pursuing Chicano studies, Mexican American studies. What do I do? He goes, well, Notre Dame has a lot of money in this. So I remember writing to Julian Zamora. I remember receiving a personal telephone call from him, not only when I applied, but even when I was accepted.
So that was a dream. But the night that I graduated, my father never participated in any school activities. And the night that I graduated, I was in the Gilfil Auditorium, and when we were coming out and all the people were hugging me and kissing me, whether they knew me or not, because of the awards, in the crowd was my father. I had never seen him at a school function. We didn't ride with him in the car. And he said that he'd give us a ride. So my mother and I and my brother got in the car and we went home. And he said that he was going to help me go to college. And I just about died. And I said, really? To Highlands? And yes, and I'm going to give you $100. To me, $100, I'd never seen $100. I thought it was a whole lot of money. As it turned out, we were on the quarter system, and $100 would get me through one quarter. And he didn't give me the total 100. I had a little money saved from cleaning houses, and that little money, and then he gave me a little bit more, and I got in, and then the rest, I worked, I continued cleaning houses, I worked in the shoe shop, and that's the way I financed it. And then the reading of the books, we were told to buy X number of books, or that they'd have a book in the library that we could all try to go and read. Well, I couldn't buy books, so I learned to offer to read the books, outline them for students, and shoot, that would make me a good student, because I was teaching everybody with a book, but I didn't have to buy books. And so I found ways of getting through. And then, darn it, I fell in love, and I got married, and I quit. And oh, my professors thought it was awful for me to quit, but I quit. And so I had only gone to school 1 year. And then I quit, and I was out, and had 3 children, and worked at little jobs. I worked at a parachute factory, and they'd run out of a contract, and I'd go back to school, and I'd go back another quarter, and then they'd get a contract, I'd go work some more, and then go back to school. So this is the way I was doing it then, and by then I knew that I had to work in my heart, and it had to be something where it was going to make a difference. By then it really was in me. And I wanted to be a Spanish teacher, because my Spanish was very different from everybody else's Spanish, because we spoke Spanish at home, standard Spanish. And so I wanted to do something with the Spanish, but the teacher that was there was young, and there was only one Spanish teacher, so I thought I need a job sooner than when she dies, right? So I changed, because my friends were going to study elementary education. I changed to elementary education, and I loved it. I just loved it. I loved working with the children, and so finally I finished and went out to teach, and I look back now, and I think I've been teaching always. It wasn't when I got my degree. I had been teaching before, because I was always trying to see how we could better. So teaching has been my career, Riga.
But I wasn't quite ready to make that leap. So I stayed 2 years at the junior college. I did very well, thank God. And then 2 years later, I transferred to a university, a Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos. And I went there because my grandma had an aunt, or had a sister who lived there. So I knew that if I was in trouble, I could always call on her. But I made my way there, and I did good there. And then I wound up attending law school. And that's where the real help occurred, because I no longer was going to be in Texas. I applied for entry into Notre Dame, and I actually got admitted. And I was really worried, because Notre Dame cost a lot of money. And about that time, I got a call from a man whose name is Jorge Canales, and he told me that if you come up here, they'll take care of you. They'll give you money. And that's when I first found out about the GPOP, which Dr. Zamora was good enough of a man to fund people who wanted to go off to college. And I was lucky enough to get funded fully, and I got a